Alright guys, welcome to the Clack Shack again. I'm going to go over my setter for some of those folks that's curious as to how long it takes to set a blade and that kind of thing. I've had a few questions. Like I said, I'm not a professional at this. I'm a amateur at best, but I've had good luck with it. My mill has been running on the same set of blades since I've had it for a little over a year now, and I have good luck. My blades actually cut a lot better than what I had expected. I won't say every blade I sharpen cuts better than the Wood-Mizer factory blades, but it seems to me that I've got everything lined up to where when I sharpen them, typically they cut as good, if not a little bit better than what I'm getting new. So I'm going to go through the steps and kind of explain how this thing works. If you've seen my previous video I did, this is a Woodland Mills 2-setter, and the reason I went with Woodland Mills was because this one to me seemed a little more user friendly. With the Wood-Mizer setter, you have to flip the blade, and I don't know about you guys, but I have a tendency to get cut if I try to flip these blades too many times. I don't know if that's just me or what, but it just seems like that's an added risk that I didn't really want, and a lot of hassle too, having to flip those blades, flip them to do one side and then flip them back in order to be able to use them. So you're having to flip each blade twice every time you set it. Now, I just decided that wasn't the route I wanted to go, and so I went with Woodland Mills. And so far I'm pleased with it. I've sharpened about 35 to 40 blades so far using the setter as well. I had been sharpening with my BMS 25 Wood-Mizer, and I got to noticing that even, the first couple of sharpenings, man, those things were cutting good. And then after about the fourth sharpening, it got to where even though they were sharp and they would cut you, they just weren't doing what I needed them to do. My cuts got real wavy. Started having diving and rising, and it was a mess. And I was getting a little disheartened and started doing some research and watching some videos and trying to figure out what my problem was. I knew it had to have been related to the blades because I could put a new blade on there and it cut fine. And that's when I realized that as I had been wearing those blades, and then even though I was sharpening them, every time I sharpen them, the tooth is getting shorter and shorter, and when that tooth gets shorter, the set closes in, because if you take and you've got those teeth like that, every time you sharpen them, they get a little shorter, that it just slowly closes in to the point where all your teeth are pretty much in a line, and that's not the way that these blades are designed to work. They're made to have one facing left, one facing right, and one in the center. The left and the right tooth go through there and cut, and then that center tooth drags the chip or the bark or the dust, or however you want to refer to it, out of the cut. I have noticed that the wider the set, you get a lot more sawdust left behind, but your mill will run cleaner. A lot of you guys, I know you complain that you get a lot of buildup in your inside your housing where your blades are, and if you're not worried about trying to pump all that sawdust through the chute and collect it or whatever, if you're like me and your mill's outside and you clean up around it and sweep off the dust and haul it away, then I don't care where the dust comes out as long as I'm cutting wood. So the thinner the set, it pulls more of the dust into the dust chute and blows it out of the mill. The wider the set, it leaves more of it behind, and it kind of falls off the edge of the log, and it stays in the cut, and then you got to clean it off. I don't have a problem with cleaning it off, because whether it's a little sawdust or a lot of sawdust, the process is the same. I use a masonry broom that you use to do swept concrete, and it's real stiff. It's easy to get the dust off, so that's what I use. But anyway, enough of that. Like I said, the setter, the way this works, this chassis, I just screwed it to a piece of pine that I had laying around, because what I do is I just screw it to this wooden table when I'm using it, and if I'm not, I take these two screws out and I can store it and get it out of my shop and get it out of my way. I don't have a dedicated table for it because I don't have a big enough shop for that. The way it works is it's got a pin here that it pivots on, and it's got another pin here, which basically it just rests on that pin. When you flip it over, it just sits on it. There's nothing to hold it there. It doesn't. It just floats on that one pin. The way that you swap from one side to the other is you take it off, rotate it, and it goes on this pin on this side. And then once you put it on this pin on this side, you just have to move it up until you line up the blade. That little shoulder right there gets me every time. Get it over here to where you line up the blade and sit it down. if there was anything that I would like to request, would be to maybe make this rounded, get rid of that shoulder there, Woodland Mills, because that thing catches it every time on this side. Not as bad on this side, but on this side it catches every time. I'll probably end up taking a file and fixing that myself. But once you get it set on there, when you squeeze the handle, whichever side the handle moves, it's pushing away. So going this way, I'm going to be bending the teeth set this way, and on the opposite side, the teeth set is going to go that way. And like I said, the way this works is you've got a middle set, you've got a left and a right. And of course, left and right and middle, it kind of depends on where you're standing, but it's all the same principle. From where I'm standing, if I look at this blade, which I mark my blades with a Hobart paint pen, so they keep track of where the weld is. When you start at the weld, you've got to go through there and figure out the first tooth that's going the way that you're setting, and that's where you want to start at. And of course, when you come around and you pass that weld, that's where you want to end at. If I was being really exact, I'd probably run this thing twice around or go really slow. But I found that I have pretty good luck with it, just doing it once and doing it kind of quick. So, but what I'm going to do to answer some of you guys' questions about how long it takes is I've actually got my stopwatch here on my phone, and I'm going to start it. I'm going to set this blade, and then we'll see how long it takes. One addition that I did do, and Woodland Mills, you can thank me later, is I added a lubrication system to my sharpener. This is basically just a sponge with WD-40 in the bottom, and I keep a big jug of WD-40 back there, and as you can tell, it cleans the blade. The one thing that all you really have to do once you get it a little WD-40 in there is just kind of squish that thing in to get it to soak up that WD, and you're ready to go. Periodically I'll pour a little more WD-40 in there. But starting here, like I said, the two handles, when they come together, you've got to stop here. All this stuff has to be adjusted before you use it. I've already adjusted mine, and we're not going to take it out of adjustment to show you, but it's not that hard. You use the dial, and then this bolt here stops the handle. So that way, whatever depth that you want to squeeze to, it'll bottom out on that handle, and that gives you an approximate, stopping point for every squeeze. So if I squeeze this all the way together right there, it's going to 50.5 thousandths. And if I release at a 50.5 thousandths, typically I'm going to get around a 15 thousandth set, because that tooth is going to bend and it's going to spring back. So that spring back is what the difference between the 50 and the 15 is that spring back from that pressure. And the dial says here that I'm at 15 thousandths. That's where I've been running mine with my LX25. I've got it adjusted with my throttle and everything. My way of cutting, I cut pine, hickory, everything with a 9-degree blade. I have found that I like 15. I've tried 20, 25, and it works great with pine, but not so much with the harder woods. Puts a little bit too much strain on my engine, so I backed it down to about 15, and I cut about a 2-year-old white oak, or water oak the other day with one of my blades, and it cut it fine. You could tell it was cutting something hard, but it cut through, it cut smooth, and cut it level. So like I said, that one, once you set it, once you squeeze in all the way, you hit around 50, and then you go back and you kind of lightly touch it so that the little pushing pin is not touching the tooth. It's just kind of holding the blade tight against this flat surface here, and it'll tell you what the set is, which that was at 15. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to run around this thing like I normally would and start the clock, and then we'll go back and look and just kind of spot check and see how it did. The hopes is it'll be within 4 thousandths. So I'm going to go ahead and start my clock. I'm going to give you a couple seconds to make up for the tooth I've already done, and then we're going to get started. Like I said, each push, you squeeze it completely until it bottoms out. Now, not every time is it going to do exactly what I want it, but everything that I've read says that as long as you are within 4 thousandths or so, it's not going to cause any major problems. Like I said, the one thing that I have noticed is if you get 1 or 2 teeth that are way out of set, it will mark up the wood a little more. But sometimes people complain that rough cut wood isn't rough enough. They like those saw marks. Some of you guys may not like the saw marks. I don't really care, because if it's something that I'm going to be looking at a lot, and I don't want them on there, I'll run it through a planer. So, like I said, every squeeze, you can watch the meter. I don't think you can see it, but it's going between 45 and 50 on the squeeze. And so that means that I'm going to be really close to that 15,000 set that I was striving for. As long as I can get 45 on the squeeze, typically I don't go around twice. Like I said, if I got one or two teeth that aren't exactly 15, that really doesn't bother me. If you do this on a regular basis, I will tell you now, it will drastically increase your squeeze ability. It's kind of like those things they had when I was a kid, you know, they had a spring on them, and we used to use them in high school. But every time you squeeze that thing, it gives you a workout. So that's pretty much how it works. We'll stop the clock for. All right, guys. Had a little issue. Kind of messed up the video a little bit, so I was gonna go back and recap on this. Doing the one side, it takes about 1.5 minutes, and that was with me talking and doing a little demonstrating during the process. The whole blade takes probably about 3 minutes. I mean, it's not that hard. Like I said, I'm not being really super particular with it. Like I said, as long as I get between 45 and 50 on the squeeze on those things, the set's usually going to be between 10 and 15. 15 is kind of, that's where I'm aiming for. But 10 to 15, like I said, it's 4/1000ths of an inch. That's not a whole lot, and they'll be ranging from that 10 to 15. If I go around it twice, I might get them all exact. But like I said, I'm more about trying to get it done quick and get it going. So once we get it sharpened, like I said, this piece here comes off, and then it's fairly easy to get the blade out. I have learned that if you lift this guy up and do this end first, it's a little easier, because this thing kind of gets in the way a little bit. So I always just take that end off first, and then it lifts out. Like I said, with my oiler here, I don't know if you can see it, but I got a pretty good little coat of WD-40 on my blades. Makes it a little easier when I go out to the BMS 25 and run this thing through the sharpener. It helps it go around and keeps it from hanging up. And also, once I put the blade back up at the mill, hanging on the wall, it protects it, keeps it from rusting, so I don't wind up with a rusted blade after a couple of days, because these things, y'all, I'm sure you know, slides a little bit of moisture on those things and they'll rust on you. And it doesn't really, I don't guess it affects the blade, but I don't like seeing the blades all rusty. But that's it. Like I said, guys, I hope this maybe help inform somebody. And I'm not a professional, so before you start criticizing or critiquing or whatever, quite frankly, it works for me. So that's all that matters. If you're interested or have any more questions or whatever, feel free to message me. And I got my link. I've had it from my Facebook page over there, so that if you want to see some of the stuff that I do, I've got an array of things. I cut my own wood and make my own projects with it. Do a little laser engraving to customize those things, and it's my hobby. I enjoy it. It's what I do in my spare time, and anytime I can help anybody out, I like to do so. So if this helps you out, if it was helpful, like I said, feel free to share it and send me some feedback, some comments, and if you want to see some of the stuff that I make, add me on my page. Thank you. Y'all have a good day. Be careful.